Morning.
I think we're good. I think we're good to go. I'm gonna start streaming now.
You know how satisfying it feels to see it straight. Pirate senses.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna you guys and throw up the screen. There we go. Okay.
Hello? Hello, can anybody hear me? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Good morning, Delegate Charles Noonan. We are just getting set up.
My phone?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Morning, Delegate Freeland here.
RDC.
Good morning. Anybody there? Vice Chair Smith.
Good morning, Shaja. We're here just waiting.
Okay, thank you.
Hello? This is Delegate Slater. Is anyone from the Office of Legislative Services on the line?
Looks like Manuel's on the lines, Delegate Slater.
Good morning, everyone.
Manuel,
Got
sorry.
Dave in it.
Yeah, hey, Sudle.
Good morning. Sorry for my tardiness. I can speak for Honorable Otto So and Honorable Daniels too as well. We just got done with a very good, beautiful prayer this morning up. And Honorable Stewart at his homestead this morning up in Sawmill. Did an offering, so thank you very much. Have a quorum? I don't know. It looks like we might need one more RDC member to make a quorum. I know Honorable Daniels will make that. He's coming down the hill right now.
Good morning. This is Delegate Charlene So.
Good morning. This is Delegate Brown online. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Brown. Good morning to Honorable Charlene So. Good morning to everyone. Got to been to all the members of the Naabik'íyáti committee. Let me go ahead and let's get things going this morning. It looks like we have a quorum. Let me go ahead and call this Naabik'íyáti committee of the 24th Navajo Nation Council special meeting into session. This is a via telecommunications meeting. I am here in Window Rock, Arizona on the Navajo Nation. I do have my colleagues throughout the Navajo Nation on the line too as well. Today's date is Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. The time now is 8:36 a.m. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order at 8:38 a.m. With that, let me go ahead and go down on we do have a proposed agenda before us. Presiding is by myself, Seth Amon, Speaker of the Navajo Nation Council. Let's go ahead and do a roll call. Ring. We're recording, right? No, yeah. Hold on, colleagues. We're waiting. Oh, there we go. We can do a roll call now.
Honorable Elmer McGay. Honorable Key L. McGay Jr. Honorable Paul McGay.
Present.
Honorable Paul McGay is present. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown present.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown is present. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton.
Charles Newton is present.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton is present. Honorable Amber Knowles-Crotty.
Good morning, Yat-A Delegate Amber Knowles-Crotty is present, calling in from Chute Springs, Navajo Nation. Thank you, Shada.
Thank you. Honorable Amber Knowles-Crotty is present. Honorable Seth Damon.
Present.
Honorable Seth Damon is present. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr., Honorable Mark Freeland,
Good morning, Freeland here, present. Thank you.
Honorable Mark Freeland is present. Honorable Pernell Halona, Honorable Jamie Heaney,
Good morning, Delegate Hino is present.
Honorable Jamie Heaney is present. Honorable Vince James,
Good morning, Delegate James, present. Thank you.
Honorable Vince James is present. Honorable Rick Ness, Honorable Carl Slater, Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.,
Present.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. is present. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr., Honorable Charlene Sell, Honorable Daniel Sell,
Daniel So, present.
Honorable Daniel Sell is present. Honorable Eugene Sell, Honorable Otto Sell, Honorable Thomas Walker Jr., Honorable Edison Winica, Honorable Edmund Yazzie, Honorable Jimmy Yellow here, Honorable Otto Sell is present. Honorable Elmer Begay, Honorable Key
Delegate
Elmer,
Charlene So is present.
Honorable Charlene Sell present. Honorable Key Elmer Jr., Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr., Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. is present. Honorable Pernell Halona, Honorable Rick Ness, Honorable Carl Slater,
Delegate Slater, present.
Honorable Carl Slater is present. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr., Honorable Eugene Sell, Honorable Thomas Walker Jr., Honorable Edison Winica, Honorable Edmund Yazzie, Honorable Jimmy Yellow here, with the vote of 14 in favor, 14 present. Mr. Damon.
With that, 14 members present. Thank you very much, Lorraine. 14 members present. We do have a quorum for our Naabik'íyáti committee meeting this morning. With that, let me go on down on the agenda. We have invocation this morning. I can honestly say very beautiful prayer this morning that was given by Honorable Otto So for an invocation. So we can continue on down on prayer. Moving on down, colleagues, requests, recognizing guests and visiting officials. Any recognizing guests and visiting officials? If there are none, I just want to personally thank Chairman Rick Nez last Thursday for taking the helm, and then also to Honorable Chairman Daniel So last Friday. Thank you very much for both of you for helping assist myself out and being a part of the discussion and taking over the meetings last week. Yeah. Moving on down, move to review and adopt the agenda. Mr. Terrell, if you want to read it into record.
Mr. Speaker, members of the committee, Naabik'íyáti Committee of the 24th Navajo Nation Council Special Meeting via telecommunication, Wind Rock, Navajo Nation, Wednesday, September 30, proposed agenda. Presiding Chair, Honorable Seth Davis, Speaker, Navajo Nation Council. 1, call meeting to order, roll call, invocation. 2, recognize guests and visiting officials. 3, review and adopt the agenda. 4, review and adopt the journals. 5, receive reports, none. 6, old business, none. 8, new business, A, legislation 0216-20. 8, close the meeting, announcements, adjournment. Mr. Speaker.
With that, colleagues, let me go ahead and get a motion.
Motion by Henio.
Motion by Chairman Henio. Second?
Second by Brown.
Second by Honorable Brown. Morning, Chairman. Good morning, Honorable Brown. That, colleagues, any comments, questions, additions, deletions to the agenda this morning? Once, went twice, went 3 times. Moving on down. Actually, we're aboard. Vote on our agenda this morning.
Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Key Al Begay Jr. Honorable Paul Begay.
Green.
Honorable Paul Begay votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
Delegate Brown votes green.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton. Honorable Amber Knazbach-Crotty.
Delegate Amber Knazbach-Crotty votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Amber Knazbach-Crotty votes green. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. Honorable Mark Freeland.
Freeland votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Mark Freeland votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Jamie Henio.
Henio votes green.
Honorable Jamie Henio votes green. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Rick Nez. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Daniel So.
I vote green.
Honorable Daniel So votes green. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Edison Winika. Honorable Eben Yazzie. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Honorable Elmer Begay. Honorable Key Al Begay Jr. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton. Honorable Herman M. Daniels
Charles
Jr.
Newton votes green.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton votes green.
Hello,
Honorable-
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr.
Here. Green.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona. Honorable Rick Nez. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Carl Slater votes green. Votes green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Edison Winika. Honorable Eben Yazzie. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair. Mr. Chair, with the vote of 14 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. 14 in favor, 0 opposed. Chair not voting. That, let's go ahead and continue on down. On our agenda, review and adopt the journals that are done. Receiving reports, item number 5, there are none. Old business, item number 6, there are none. Item number 7, new business, legislation 0216-20, an action related to health, education, and human services, budget and finance, law and order, and the Naabik'íyáti committees, and the Navajo Nation Council extending the fund lapse exception to the annual appropriations to the Veterans Trust Fund as set forth in 12 NNC subsection 1171B through the Navajo Nation fiscal year 2024. Sponsor by Madam Chair Charles Newton, and co-sponsor Honorable Paul Begay, co-sponsor Madam Chair Amber Crotty, co-sponsor myself, Seth Amon, co-sponsor Honorable Edison Wanika. That, Mr. Platero, if you could read it into the record.
Mr. Speaker, members of the committee, tracking number 0216-20, and that's related to health. Mr. Speaker, members of the committee, tracking number 0216-20, and actions relating to health, education, and human services, budget and finance, law and order, and Naabik'íyáti committees, and Navajo Nation Council extending the fund lapse exception to the annual appropriation to the Veterans Trust Fund as set forth in 12 NNC section 1171B to Navajo Nation fiscal year 2024. Attached to the legislation, you have a letter dated September 16, 2020 from Speaker Seth Amon, revised committee assignment for legislation 0216-20. You have a committee report from the Budget and Finance Committee, has had it under consideration, reports the same with the recommendation that it do pass with one amendment, page 1, line 16. Make the following changes. Year 2024, amending 12 NNC, section 11718A and B. Page 3, line 19, insert new section as follows. Section 3, amendment to Title 12. The Navajo Nation amends the Navajo Nation Code 12 NNC, section 1171 as follows. The Navajo Nation Code annotated Title 12 Fiscal Matters, Chapter 10, Navajo Nation Trust Fund, Subchapter A, Navajo Nation Veterans Trust Fund. Section 1171, Establishment. A, the Navajo Nation Veterans Trust Fund, hereinafter the trust fund is established with an initial appropriation of $6 million from revenues from undesignated tribal reserves. Each year during the appropriation of the Navajo Nation comprehensive budget, the Navajo Nation Council shall budget a sum equal to at least 4% of any and all projected revenues of the Navajo Nation, including but not limited to revenues received from taxes, oil and gas, mining and minerals, timber, land rentals, interest and dividends gained on sale of securities and other revenue-producing activities. 1/2 of the 4% shall be transferred to the Navajo Veterans Trust Fund to be used as set forth herein. The remaining 1/2 of that 4% shall be administered by the Department of Navajo Veterans Affairs. Each of the 5 DNVA agency offices shall be allocated an equal share of that amount to provide construction of up to 15 homes equitably in each of their respective agencies, using all possible assistance program funds that such veterans may qualify for to construct as many homes as possible and provide minor home renovations and repairs for Navajo veterans. Navajo veterans shall be eligible to use Veteran Housing Fund as a down payment on a mortgage. C, the annual appropriation authorized above shall continue, and for the purposes of this resolution, all unexpended funds shall not lapse back into the Veterans Trust Fund to the fiscal year 2017 and shall expire thereafter unless specifically reauthorized. Section 4, codification. The provisions of this act which amend or adopt new sections of the Navajo Nation Code shall be codified by the Office of Legislative Counsel. The Office of Legislative Counsel shall incorporate such amended provisions in the next codification of the Navajo Nation Code. Section 5, Saving Clause. Should any provision of this act be determined invalid by the Navajo Nation Supreme Court or the District Courts of the Navajo Nation without appeal to the Navajo Nation Supreme Court, the remainder of the act shall remain the law of the Navajo Nation. Mr. Speaker, Council is final authority on this legislation.
Motion, Vice Chair Smith.
Second, Delegate James.
That, colleagues, I hear that there's a motion, Honorable Vice Chair Smith, on legislation 0216-20. Second by Honorable Vince James. Good morning, Vice Chair. Good morning, Honorable James. That, colleagues, any comments, questions on legislation 0216-20?
This is Delegate Crotty with a question.
Okay, with that, we turn it over to Madam Chair, Charles Newton. Good morning. The floor is yours, Madam Chair. 20 minutes on the board.
Good morning, Speaker. I hope everyone can hear me. This legislation, the purpose of this legislation is to reauthorize the availability of unexpended funds in the Navajo Nation Veterans Housing Program to extend to the end of fiscal year 2024. In 2013, CS-48-13 was enacted, which amended the Navajo Nation Veterans Trust Fund to provide for equal distribution of the annual comprehensive budgeted amount between the Navajo Nation Trust Fund and the Department of Veterans Affairs. CS-48-13 basically established the Navajo Nation Veterans Trust Fund with the initial appropriation of $6 million from revenues of the undesignated tribal reserves. Each year during the appropriation, the Navajo Nation comprehensive budget, the Navajo Nation Council, they are required to budget a sum as indicated in the legislation of equal to at least 4% of any and all projected revenues of the taxes, oil and gas, mining and mineral, timberland, rental, interest, and dividends. They'll gain on a sale of securities and other revenue producing activities. So 1/2 of that 4% is supposed to be transferred to Navajo.
Honorable Madam Chair, Charles Newton. Madam Chair, Charles Newton. Madam Chair.
And then in 2017,
Chair.
CS-56-17 reauthorized the
Chair.
continued availability. Yes, can you hear me?
For about
Hello?
for about a whole minute.
Yeah?
Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, but I was
Hello?
wanted, Madam Chair, for about almost a minute and a half, we could not hear you.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID.
Okay, let me call in on my phone. Speaker, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
it's telling me that the host has put me on hold.
I
Yeah,
can hear
I
you.
can hear you.
We can hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hello? Okay,
We can
it's
hear you.
telling me that the host has put me on hold. I'm trying to call in on my
We can
phone.
hear
Okay,
you.
I guess I'll proceed forward then.
Okay.
All right, so, okay. So let me step back really quickly. So technically there were two legislations that were passed. One is CS-48-13, and then the other one was CS-56-17. The CS-48-13 was the initial legislation that appropriated the $6 million revenues of the undesignated tribal the tribal reserves. Basically, what it said that is each year during appropriation, the Navajo Nation would put together a sum equal to at least 4% of all the projected revenues that came from taxes, oil and gas, mining and minerals, timberland, rental interest and dividends, gain on sale of securities and other revenue producing activities. 1/2 of that 4% was to be transferred into the Navajo Veterans Trust Fund to be used for, to be distributed to the 5 agencies and allocated in equal shares to those 5 agencies so that each of the agencies could construct up to 15 homes equitably in each of their respective agencies. And also that veterans could qualify for the construction of their homes, and also to help follow or to qualify for minor home renovations and repairs for Navajo veterans. And that was in CS-48-13. In 2017, CS-56-17 reauthorized the continued availability of the unexpended funds in the Navajo Nation Veterans Housing Program, and for it not to lapse. So at this point, we are at the end of the reauthorization, and it will expire today, September 30th, 2020. And the purpose of this legislation, again, is to extend it to the end of the fiscal year 2024. Mr. Zwarline, are you on the line? Mr. Zwarline is listening in, but he doesn't have the call-in number that was sent to him, but he is online listening as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and send him the number, but in the meantime, I stand for questions. Thank you.
Okay, before we proceed and move forward, can everybody hear me? Okay, good morning again, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair Charles Newton. The question I have first as a chair of Naabik'íyáti committee, let me go, is Ms. Barbroff on the line, or Ms. Lowell from Office of Legislative Counsel?
Speaker.
Good morning, Ms. Barbroff.
Hi, Speaker. Good morning. This is Dana.
Okay, this is a question. The Navajo Nation, this legislation was originally intended to extend the Navajo Nation Veterans Trust Fund to 2024, but in the Budget and Finance Committee report, it indicates that it's codifying and it's actually creating a new annotated section in Title 12 under the Appropriations Act, which is Title 12, Chapter 10, subsection 8, 1171. Now, my question is, because you're amending Title 12, 1171 and A and B in this now, does that change the intent of the legislation? Because what you're asking for first is you're asking for an extension Now in here, you're actually creating a new section. Or is this the appropriated area that was sanctioned or that was adopted in a different section that you're just applying into this section too as well?
Speaker, thank you. Hang on, I just had up the Budget and Finance Committee amendment, and I just lost it. So hang on just a second. I had a little bit of a community failure. So basically, as was explained in the presentation, the intent of this legislation was not intended to be the original intent.
Ms. Barbara, we can't hear you. Can anybody hear her? Or is it just me? Ms. Barbara? Ms. Barbara? Ms. Lowell?
Speaker, it's Kristen. I'm on the line. I can't hear Dana. I don't know what happened. I did have a discussion. I'm sorry, Speaker.
Wait a minute.
Okay. Hopefully you can hear me. I did have a discussion. Okay, great. I did have a discussion with Ms. Bobroff before I had drafted the amendment at the Budget and Finance Committee. And our discussion was centered around the fact that it was up to the members of the committee to make a determination as to the ultimate intent of the legislation. So, I mean, there's ways to look at it narrowly, or there's ways to look at the intent of the legislation more broadly. And so that was what the discussion that I had with Ms. Bobroff was about, that it was up to the members of the committee to ultimately decide whether this was the amendment was in conformance with the purpose of the legislation. Speaker.
Speaker, this is Ms. Bobroff, and I very much appreciate Ms. Lowell sharing that. So to summarize, it is a determination of the council, the committee, and the sponsors what the intent of the legislation is, whether they want to look at broadly or narrowly. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you then. With that, colleagues, as stated by Office Legislative Service, Office Legislative Council, the intent is passed on to the Naabik'íyáti Committee for further consideration. That, colleagues, we go back to the board. Madam Chair, Amber Crotty, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning. Thank you.
Speaker, come in.
Thank you, That was Delegate Eugene So requesting to be added to the queue. Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Delegate So, for the prayer today for our people. For the sponsor, thank you. I support this legislation, but I do have some concerns regarding how many times this resolution or this funding has been set to expire, but then yet council will reauthorize. And so I just want to get some clarification. I think so this was established in 2014. And so my question is, since 2014, how much funding has been allocated for each agency? That's important to know as we break down this funding. And how many homes have been built in each agency. So is the Navajo Veterans Administration in compliance with the legislation to build 15 homes every year per agency? And so I'd need a breakdown of how many homes are planned in each agency, and then if this funding, and then what is the amount right now for the breakdown for each agency. The veterans continue to support the housing program. My concern is that the Veterans Administration are failing our veterans by not developing either a system or a pathway for veterans to either have access to a home, and looking at press releases in particular, I have not seen a discussion how Northern Agency veterans will benefit from this lapse, or how they will use their dollars. When I toured the Fort Defiance manufacturing site, temporary manufacturing site, it sounds like they're gonna, there's a plan to possibly manufacture there, and then those homes will go to Western Agency. And so I think in terms of the planning or in future discussions, what is it for each agency? What's the breakdown? How do we hold the administration accountable? And in looking at this legislation, I understand the president doesn't want any amendments, but I would need that information, Speaker, and sponsored by council, because I need to ensure that veterans in the agencies are also being served, not just Western. Like I'm trying to understand why Western so far has the only plan to receive homes when we have veterans throughout Navajo Nation. And what I want to take is the politics out of it. If it's just going to Western, I would argue that there is some favoritism, and that veterans across Navajo Nation have served, and we should have a plan attached to provide housing, or as the amendment from Budget and Finance, that this housing funding may be used for a veteran who has the ability for a veteran's loan. And this could be used like as a down payment to get them going. Or how are we going to work with Navajo contractors who can build homes? So it's not just the government building homes for veterans, but we are building a solid Navajo economy based off of building homes. In total, we need 35,000 homes. I've never seen a document or any type of assessment on how many veterans need homes, but I do hear on an individual case-by-case basis, and I'm concerned that they don't have a clear idea when their housing application is completed, when they're assessed, and then what year they should be receiving their home. And as council, we asked this from our roads committee for these 5-year plans and development, keeping them accountable. We asked this from CPMD. And I think as a council, we now should be keeping the Veterans Administration accountable for how they execute and spend Veterans Trust Fund dollars. My last question and concern is as our revenues decrease, we're seeing a decrease in Veterans Trust Fund allocation. So this year, although we tabled the legislation, there was a $600,000 decrease, and that would have also affected the funds to go into the housing. So as we extend or allow these funds to be exempt from lapsing, what is the plan as our revenues decrease? And then so how do we let the veterans know that in the future there will be less funds available for either one of their programs? Thank you, Speaker. I'll go back on mute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For colleagues, those that are listening in directly on Zoom, there's a time lapse, and that time lapse is due to the, I guess, the speed of the Navajo Nation's Window Rock locations, I guess, internet service. So that's why it gets choppy going in and out. So I just want to let you know. But if you're listening onto the phone, just dialing in, there's actually no lapse time on there. So might be better to get on the phone if you're hearing that lapse, if you're on the Zoom application this morning. So again, thank you for being online, though. Everyone, let me go ahead and move on down to Honorable Eugene So, and then I'll go back to the sponsor for both questions. Honorable Eugene So. Good morning, Honorable Eugene So.
Yeah, Dave. So one question would be today na the legislation the nation is that's my question today na. And then regards to this based on him see there's a lot of legislation that went by again and again, all since I don't know how many years now. Asaki and hasn't seen the same thing, trying to ask what's the hold up? I'm sorry, that's what I'm thinking about. How can we really know where the hold up is? Why these other legislation went by and why they're not working and why we had to get another one now again today. So am I in the classroom? So that's my my thinking on this legislation. I want to know what's holding it up and why it's not being abided by, or they doing it, or what. Just for example, I put in my home site lease and everything, chapters, resolution, etc., whatever they requested in the time back in the 80s. I haven't got my house yet. So how many years ago? So I was thinking about that, and then also we need to understand and also respectfully, there are veterans out there that go by the Title I. Or ever since they came back, they don't tell them, they don't say they're veterans, but there might be a way somehow we can find those people out and try to help them too. But they don't want anything, that they went through and take it back to their family or on to the reservation, all the negativeness of what happened to them. And seeing all the negativeness out there, in the front lines or in battles, and all the things that they saw, they don't want to bring that back. Those are some veterans that are going by Title I. They dissent and they don't talk about it, and they don't even do nothing. Into a new world that they to not bring all the negatives that he's doing the case. Gado, from Tapatas. So 8 hours na shul, go other than Sena case I lay. 8 Hagit or he veterans out there because I know some of them. There's about maybe 20s that I know in Chinny, just right there in town. So these are some of the veterans that don't ask for anything. That they don't say I did this. I'm a veteran. I went here. I went there. Don't I need what they listen. So those are some of the veterans that don't know. We don't really count. I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure by respect because they don't want to be counted. A dog cracker. That's really critical for me to see if we can help them too. But they must say we don't know what we're talking about about veteran housing or some money that they can use. Okay, on that. So even the Obe has street or the DDG that there are all veterans out there. They just send all everything's outside. They left it beside all the negativeness outside. They never brought it on to the Navajo reservation. They never brought it into their family. Our kids, they just send because they don't want no negativeness among them where they live. So it'll be hostile. But that question in regards to this legislation today, there's some kind of they're questioning something that I want to know what they mean. Okay, I don't want what's the hold up with all these legislation that was passed before again and again, and how come we don't have any houses? How can we find out? I think the only way I would request Virginia is to have it audit again. It will know what's going on. So I don't want those people out there that's going to be like me that put in their home site application with all the whatever they request for into the process. And back in the 80s, it's almost 40 years ago. Some veterans are like that. How can we? No, don't do that to the veterans. Accredited over hospital, and I think we need an audit. So we'll find out all these applications that went before. I don't know how many years now. Get those applications to see if they find one somewhere. But here, where is it? So I would really like to see that. Speaker, thank you. I'm just right outside your house here on the north side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Eugene. So let me go back then to Madam Chair, Honorable Charles Newton for response. And then I do see that your agent is on the line now too, Mr. Zorline. But Mrs. Zorline, if you're mute yourself at *6. Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Shatila Speaker Damon, Otto Shadeja, Honorable Crotty, Otto Shajado, Honorable Eugene So for the comments and questions. At this time, since we do have Mr. Zorline on the line, I will go ahead and defer the questions that were asked, particularly about the homes built, how many for each agency, and then also the issues surrounding the amounts with the Veterans Trust Fund. And then as far as the question regarding what is the plan for the decrease for Veterans Funds, because we will be seeing a decrease in our revenues, I'll answer that question after Mr. Zorline answers the questions pertaining regarding the budget and the funds. Mr. Zorline, are you on the line?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and go on mute. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honorable delegates. So if I'm copying down these questions correctly, I will start with the plan for the distribution of the homes. This facility here in San Benito has a model home. It's the prototype. That home is the only one right now planning to go to Western Agency ahead of the actual homes, ahead of the actual veterans applications being assessed for qualifications. There is only the plan for the one home to go to Western Agency. Every other home being built will be in accordance with the housing plan that will be in different legislation that is sitting with Ms. Barbroff at Office of Legislative Counsel right now. The funding levels of the existing accounts. This gets a little confusing, so please bear with me. There are 10 total housing fund accounts. There are 2 per agency. Eastern Agency in their first account has $3,683,442.63. The second account has $800,000. Fort Defiance Agency has $3,735,422.33, $800,000 in their second account. Chinle Agency, $3,611,997.37, $800,000 in their second account. Western Agency has $3,674,799.11. Their second account has $800,000. Shiprock Agency's account has $3,652,465.75. Their second account also has $800,000. These numbers are accurate out of FMIS as of August 31st of 2020. Based on the allocations for the FY21 fiscal year, each of the 5 agencies will be allocated an additional $637,612. And that will go into their second account. The homes that have been built, Chinle Agency between FY14 and FY15 had 26 homes built. Western Agency had 22 homes built. Crown Point Agency had 28. Shiprock had 18. And Fort Defiance has 22. That is a grand total of 116 homes that were built for the year 1 and year 2 applicants of the program. The holdup on the construction started when the program was audited by the Office of the Auditor General. That audit report was accepted by the Budget and Finance Committee through Resolution BFAU-24-17. Since that audit, there have been no homes constructed by the Veterans Administration. Some of the issues that were identified through that audit were that homes were being awarded to veterans who were not homeless, and homes were being awarded to individuals who were not veterans. One of the other major findings was that the Veterans Administration could not account for $1 million worth of materials purchased from Home Depot. We could not provide documentation on where that material went, to which veteran's home. This all happened before I became the director, so a lot of the information I have is secondhand, but that information was indicating that materials were being delivered to job sites, and those materials were being pilfered, or they were not being properly protected on site, and so they became weather damaged and unusable. In the last couple of weeks, we found out that there were several's falling short. There were 44 open purchase orders from the beginning of the program at the various Home Depots in the areas. 44 open purchase orders. where anyone who knew about these purchase orders would have been able to walk into Home Depot and charge material to these accounts. So we've been able to get those purchase orders closed. We have closed additional contracts that were open under those various accounts for the housing program. Start finalizing where are we sitting on these dollar amounts. So the rough estimate on the dollar amounts is $22.5 million that is sitting in the program. What the Veterans Administration is doing to be able to adjust with the declining revenues of the Navajo Nation to fund this program is we are getting grants from the Navajo Housing Authority, from their NAHASDA funds. As soon as we are able to start building, we have a $13.5 million grant that is being approved by NHA. That is going to be in addition to the $22.5 million we have in the accounts, plus the $3 million that is being authorized under FY21. Moving forward, as we demonstrate we're able to actually build homes, the Housing Authority will authorize us to do larger grant applications. So with this year being 13.5, next year has the very real possibility of becoming 26 million. So the impact of the general fund revenues being allocated for the housing program will be negligible from where I sit. That if we can use an alternative funding source to be able to run this program, that would be preferred. When we look at the cost to build homes, the cost of construction across the 5 agencies for identical homes varies. It is less expensive to build in areas in Eastern Agency closer to major metropolitan areas like Gallup or Farmington. It becomes more expensive to build out in remote areas, Ojo Encino, Pueblo Pintado, Tohajale, Alamo, Rema. Same applies for Western Agency. Cost of construction is more expensive out there. So when we talk about the requirement to build up to 15 homes and build equitably, we need to understand that construction costs are going to vary, and they will vary in the range of tens of thousands of dollars, depending on where we are trying to build. So if we do not make appropriate modifications to the existing laws, then we will be hindered and not be able to build evenly across the agencies. We will be able to build 15 homes in Shiprock, 15 in Eastern, 15 in Fort Defiance. We'll probably be in an area of 10 to 12 in Chinle, and we'll be lucky if we can get to 10 in Western. So the equitability of construction is going to be called into question. The existing legislation also requires that we hire Navajo Nation employees to perform the construction. The Auditor General's report found that the construction on those homes was insufficient, and a lot of those homes that were built are already beginning to degrade. So this will become a longer conversation, but I'm just going to hit the wave tops here. The problem that we run into is having legitimately qualified individuals to perform that work. The Division of Community Development in the past has paid for their carpenters to get contractor licenses. And the problem that they ran into there is once they had that license, they left employment with the Navajo Nation and started their own company. So it started the process over again. How does the Navajo Nation, as a government entity, maintain individuals capable of ensuring homes are built to the appropriate standards? The simplest answer is we should not be building the homes as the government. We should be using Navajo-owned contractors to build those homes. The existing legislation requires that we use Navajo Nation employees. So that's one of the changes in the legislation that's coming down the line, is to make that change so that we can create more jobs through Navajo-owned construction enterprises and be able to put local residents to work in the areas where we're building the homes. And the last question that I had here on my list, this program was started in 2013. Any applications that were turned in before that No one currently working in this office has any information on any veterans housing program prior to 2013. Now, that does not mean that we do not have applications sitting in the pile of the 1,141 applications that are from 1980, 1990, the early 2000s. We may very well have applications that are that old. But as to the program that was used, to why there were no homes built in the 80s or the 90s, I can offer no testimony to that fact, because that is simply way before my time and anyone who works over here at the Veterans Administration at this time. But if anybody does have any information to that effect, I'm more than willing to take a look into it and dig. As we're digging through all of our files, just yesterday we found about another 50 applications up in Shiprock. So that's going to be moving our total up to closer to 1,200 applications. So we're continuing to open desk drawers, search through, looking for all these applications, because I fully agree that veterans who have had applications in the system, at least for the last 7 years, and to include those beyond from the 80s, they've been waiting more than their fair share, and we need to start building now. And this fund lapse extension is going to play a major part. That $22 million sitting in these accounts now is going to build a lot of homes. Combine that with the $13 million from NHA, in the next 12 months, the amount of homes that we are going to be able to build is going to provide a major impact. And then as we continue getting supplemental funds from NHA, we will be able to continue to provide higher numbers than 75 per year. And we'll be able to bring that 1,200 number waiting list down, so that by the time new veterans are submitting their applications, their homes are being built within the same year. So, Madam Chair, Mr. Speaker, I think that concludes my answers to the questions that I had recorded here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zorla. Speaker, as I indicated, I would go ahead and answer a few of the questions that were posed after Mr. Zorline answered the questions that were specific to veterans' homes. As for the decrease for veterans funds, what is the plan? At this point, I don't believe there is a plan, even Navajo Nation as a whole. The programs that rely on the revenues that do come, I believe Honorable Freeland at one point asked that question, what is our plan? And so I don't know if council puts together that plan, or if the president's office is responsible for putting together that plan. I would assume it would be the president's office that would be responsible for putting that plan together. However, I think that that is a question that the 24th Navajo Nation Council is going to have to tackle. So at this point, I don't know what the plan is, aside from, I think it's very important that we start informing the people of the Navajo Nation what the outcome of this pandemic is going to be, and how that's going to affect the services that we currently provide to the Navajo people. I think it goes back to that proper education and how do we inform our people of those things. As far as the audit, I did drop a letter to ask for the Veterans Trust Fund to be audited. I did send that to Hope McDonald Lone Tree. I haven't received a copy of that yet. So once I do have that letter, I am planning to get a complete number, but as Mr. Zerline indicated, an audit was recently done, and he did provide that information. I will have Mr. Zerline share that information that he just provided to council via email, so that we have all of those numbers in front of us. Mr. Zerline, if you could send that email out, I would appreciate it. The other question I think that was posed at the very beginning by Dana regarding the strict or general reading of the legislation. I really think that in this case, I think we really need to do a general reading of the legislation, looking at the intent and the purpose of establishing this fund, and I guess looking at it in the sense that this legislation will ensure that veterans are receiving homes. It's really unfortunate at this point that we have many of the homes that have not been built yet, and many people still remain on the list as well. I do have an application, a list of applications that were sent to us by. I do have a list of all of the homes that were, I guess, the applications, the completed applications for the Northern Agency. And I did share, I believe that we did have that information that was sent to us, but at this point, my understanding is we have 140 applicants who have, veterans who have applied for homes. I don't think any of these homes have been built, and this is just in the Northern Agency. And so Mr. Zwerlein and I, we have had conversations about, what is the plan to start moving forward to address this matter. And I did tour the facility there in San Benito as well. So I guess the question is, are we going to stop the funds now and catch up with the homes and reestablish at a different time? Or are we just going to go ahead and proceed forward and extend this for another 4 more years and see what we can do to address the shortage of homes for veterans? The last thing that I want to state is I really like the idea posed by Shadeja Honorable Amber Crotty and using some of those funds for a down payment. There are a lot of veterans who do live off the reservation and, who would really benefit from these housing programs here on the Navajo Nation. So maybe that's something that this council can start considering, is how do we expand that type of service to all of the veterans who are on the reservation and those who are also off the reservation as well. How do we help them? So with that, I hope that I was able to answer all of your questions. I'm going to go ahead and go back on mute, Speaker. Thank you.
Speaker, put me in the queue. This is Daniels, Delegate Daniels.
Hello? Speaker, are you still there? Can anybody hear me? Speaker, *6 to unmute yourself.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay, great. Thank you, colleagues. Sorry, the internet started to act up here in your chambers. So bear with us. Colleagues, the time now is 9:42 p.m. We do have 18 minutes to get this legislation out of Nabi. And then I just want to let you know that this discussion will continue at Navajo Nation Council with this legislation going to Navajo Nation Council. But I'm just urging my colleagues to pass this legislation and we can get this onto the Navajo Nation Council special session that starts at 10 o'clock this morning. With that, I have Honorable Daniels, Honorable Otto So, and Honorable Chairman So, Honorable Otto So, and then Honorable Daniels in the queue at this time. Chairman So, floor is yours.
Star 6. You got Ace at Chile.
Oh.
Chairman Seth Damon, Otto Shanantai, members of the Naabik'íyáti committee, Otto, Quaggy, Mr. Squirline, and all the folks on this call, veterans. I guess the main thing is, even if we pass it, can this legislation be taken over to the president, and will he sign it today? If he takes his full 10 days, then this intent and purpose of this legislation seems to have become null and void. And for that aspect, I'd like to ask Controller, Ms. Perling Kirk, and then, of course, our Chief Legislative Counsel, what happens? The other is, if we're going to be intending to change Navajo Nation code, would it really require the 5-day comment period? That's the aspects. And so that particular item. And then the other is just, in relativity, we're dealing with the COVID, and there are HIPAA regulations for names and locations and all the critical aspects of a person's residence and health status. In this aspect, do veterans, when they apply for these funds, do they waive requirements that basically then allows for their names on lists to be shared? The privacy aspects really troubles me when the sponsor of this legislation says she has a list. And is that a form of micromanaging? For me, I don't want to know the list. I want to make sure we have legislation that covers everybody. So in that aspect, Mr. Chair, I'd like to get my questions asked of Controller as well as Legislative Counsel. The other is, the general message was the President doesn't want this thing amended, but now we have a Veterans Director that says we need to amend this legislation. So it seems like we're not all on the same page as of yet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman So. My colleagues, 14 minutes left. Honorable Otto So. Right. Weaving his time. Moving on down. Honorable Daniels. Then I'll go back to sponsor and Legislative Counsel. Honorable Daniels.
Thank you, Chair. Aron kudo Naabik'íyáti committee. Here kudo aron da kudo da this morning kudo solo da behada IC kudo AIC here kudo aron na kudo shama kudo legislation kudo central kudo that I appreciate you bringing this legislation before Naabik'íyáti committee that this morning, and also you have with you Mr. Zwerline, legislation so first and foremost, I would like to thank all the veterans throughout the Navajo Nation and also of the Navajo Nation. When it comes to campaigning, every 4 years, veterans, elders, students, Nihiganda Hado Lesha Noda, Bendown Nego, but Nagada Roda and the story did or did Esco. I don't want to talk a little bit about equity between the agencies. So on the radar, I know that Mrs. Werline mentioned Shiprock 45, and which one was it? But on the data chapters like Eastern and also Western chapter houses, they're way out. They're kind of like scattered out in remote areas. So, as a delegate from the North region, Navajo, Ojeto, Shanto, and Naabik'íyáti, that's a North region, I stand at the rate of equity. I see that throughout the Navajo Nation, I want to treat all the veterans equally. So I'm gonna wait the rest of my time. Chair, I'll have some more questions at the special session. If this passes, Chair, thank you.
Okay, with that, we go back to Madam Chair Charles
Speaker.
Newman, and then I guess a question to Office of Legislative Counsel as well.
Speaker, can anyone hear me?
Yes, Chairman Yazzie.
Oh, okay. All right. I'd like to be in the queue box.
Hey, put you in there. That.
Roger.
The question, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Speaker. We have exactly 9 minutes to get this legislation passed. So I appreciate the comments that were made, and I agree with you, Shiaj, that all veterans need to be treated equally. I agree 100% with that. The information that was shared with me, I guess, is the questions that were asked by our veterans, and I was included in that email regarding the numbers. There was no HIPAA requirements information on there. They were just the numbers. So I don't see why that's an issue. And as far as micromanaging, I think that that's a very interesting term to use because we tend to use that term a lot. And yet I just wonder, do we know the definition of what it means to micromanage? Getting information for our veterans and sharing that information among our veterans is not micromanaging. It's getting the information to share with the people that you represent. So I did gather information, but these questions were posed by our veterans, and I was included in that email. So I see how that's a form of micromanaging. It's really unfortunate that we get accused of these things in situations where we're only trying to assist the people that we represent. So to be clear, this information was shared with the Northern Agency veterans, and it was included in that email as a form of communication. There were questions posed going back and forth, and I encourage our veterans to email Mr. Zwerline if you have any questions. He responds to those emails. He will answer your questions, so I encourage it. As far as the change in the code, I'm not sure if this would require a change in the code. As I stated earlier, I'd like to see a general reading and not a strict reading. I think the general reading is allowing this legislation to go through, and it did go through the 5-day comment period. So it's just extending. Whether it's a code revision is a strict reading. If it's just the legislation extending, I consider that to be a general reading. So with that, and then as far as the president's comment about how if this, if we pass it today with no amendments, just to be clear, colleagues, this legislation was on Naabik'íyáti last week, but it was not recognized. And Carl Slater, Honorable Slater, and I tried to argue that that we should hear the legislation, but it wasn't heard, which is why it required a special Naabik'íyáti today and also a special council because it is due today. So with that, we have 6 minutes remaining before we can proceed forward with this legislation. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Office Legislative Council.
Good morning. I'm unmuted now. So a couple of questions, and this is Dana, Chief Legislative Council. A couple of the questions that I picked up on is whether if President does not sign this legislation today, whether the funding will lapse and go back into the Veterans Trust Fund. My position will be that if Council passes this legislation today, then the funds are safe and shall not revert back into the trust fund. The President has a ministerial opportunity for the 10 days. It would be nice, of course, if he just signed it in. But I think if you pass today, you will be fine. One of the things that I would like to point out, I'm not sure if it has been mentioned or not, but if the if the date is not extended here, then the dollars will go back into the trust fund. But to pull them back out of the trust fund at a later date, because they will become principal. And under 12 NNC 1174, it states that the Veterans Trust Fund principal shall not be expended except pursuant to a referendum adopted by a 2/3 vote of all registered Navajo voters. So if the date is not extended and the funds do expire, they will go back into the trust fund as principal. So they won't be lost. They won't go to some other general fund or such, or the UUFB. They just go back into the trust fund as principal, and then, but to move them back would back to housing would require a referendum. As far as information about veterans, any veterans applications would be covered and would fall under the Navajo Nation Privacy Act. So any personal information should be treated as protected and not shared outside the government unless and not shared outside the government. As far as the amendment, making this a code amendment, I'm not going to say that, I can't say that there is an absolute code requirement that the amendment gets 5 days notice. It is, of course, nice for transparency and comment periods, but it's not required. I think those are that I've answered the questions that I have written down. Thank you, Speaker.
All right. Yeah, we gotta go to vote. Chairman Yazi, you have a simple question or can ask it at council. We gotta vote on this legislation.
Let's go ahead and vote, and then I'll ask at session, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Yazi. With that, colleagues, no other further discussion. We can go to vote on legislation 0216-20. Went once, twice, 3 times. Go to board.
Honorable Elmer McGay. Honorable K.L. McGay Jr. Honorable Paul McGay. Honorable Paul McGay votes red. Honorable Nathaniel Brown. Green. Sorry, green.
Delegate Brown votes green.
Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton.
Green.
Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton votes green.
We need to let them know that this is not going to be signed today.
Honorable Emma Canasbach Crotty.
Delegate Crotty votes green. Thank you.
Honorable Amber Canasbach Crotty votes green. Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr.
I vote green.
Honorable Herman M. Daniels Jr. votes green. Honorable Mark Phelan.
Green.
Honorable Mark Phelan votes green. Honorable Pernell Helena. Honorable Jamie Henia.
But that was before you added new law to it, sir.
Honorable Mitch James.
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable Jamie Henia votes green. Honorable Mitch James votes green. Honorable Rick Nez. Honorable Carl Slater.
Delegate Slater green.
Honorable Carl Slater votes green. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr.
Green.
Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Wilson Stewart Jr. Honorable Charlene So.
I vote green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Daniel So. Honorable Eugene So.
Oh, look, Ish.
Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So.
Green.
Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Edison Winnica.
Green.
Honorable Edison Winnica votes green. Honorable Evan Yazzie.
Green.
Honorable Evan Yazzie votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yelly here. That's it. With a vote of 14 in favor and 0 opposed, Mr. Chair.
Okay, with that, 14 in favor, 0 opposed, motion carries. That, colleagues, it's the end of Nabi. Time down. With that, colleagues, we need about 10 minutes to close down the Nabi committee vote and change over to the Navajo Nation Council session. So we'll start here in about another 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone. So if the legislature
Did we adjourn?